What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a topic to talk to you about, as is usual when I am prompted to create a video such as this one. So today we are going to be doing another impressions video, and today's impressions are going to be a little bit awesome. It's a good impressions day, good day for gaming, good week for gaming. Without further ado, we are going to talk about Chernobylite, a game that is in early access that is being developed by the Farm 51, who are also known for their World War III video game that is set in Russia. So, without further ado, we're going to talk about this Chernobylite early access game and what it has to offer. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the game is, the kind of story that's in the game, and I'm going to talk to you all a lot about what I think about the game, and obviously that's the point of this impressions video. So if you all like it, you can press the like button, hit the sub button for more, hit that bell so you never miss a video, and let's get into it. So Chernobylite is a pretty interesting game. It is a survival horror game set in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, which includes, in the early access, I don't know whether they call it showcase. There's an early access, it's almost like a showcase of a game. The early access game features 4 distinct locations, 3 of which have this sort of story to them, and one of them which is a free roam mode where you can explore, gather resources and all that type of stuff, and kind of experience a little bit of what the world has to offer in the game. So with this, there's a little bit of cool stuff here. There's a lot of cool stuff here. The biggest positive for Chernobylite right now is this sense of incredibly good atmosphere. I say this about survival horror games a lot, but if you don't get your atmosphere right, then you don't get the game right, unfortunately. A lot of survival horror games tend to kind of put aside the whole, oh, we need an atmosphere game, like an atmospheric type of situation. And most survival horror games put their whole emphasis on this idea of conserving ammo, conserving resources, whatever. And that's great and all, and that's stuff that Resident Evil and all those types of games have mastered. But people who develop these games, indie devs who are new to the scene, tend to forget that in order to be a survival horror game, it has to be horror and it has to be survival. Survival, sure, you can do, but horror is a little bit harder to nail with this genre because there's this sense of kind of, you have to get both parts right in order to get the whole thing right. And Chernobylite certainly gets the horror part right. No doubt about it. The game is... The game is legitimately terrifying. It is a very well-made game with some legitimately good scares. No, pretty much none of the scares got me. There was this one part where I was in this room where like an audio of a child was playing, and I actually left the building and then came back, and there was like a woman standing in the window or something. It was weird, and I didn't come back to that building until the end of my session, and finally the woman had disappeared, so I don't know where the woman went, but she was gone. 99% sure she was a mannequin, but that's neither here nor there. And that was the moment where I realized, wow, this game is definitely doing the horror part right. Now, with horror, we're missing one half, and we're missing the survival part. And how does this game deal with its horror? It deals with its horror good. How does it deal with its survival? The survival is decent, but it has this weird system that I've seen in a few horror games, but it's not, or in a few survival games. Sorry, I keep on mixing my words up. I've seen it with a few survival games where it's these like decimal things, and you have to you have to gather resources, and like the decimals add up together, and you have to get like a certain decimal to make stuff, to be able to craft stuff. It's a weird system that I am honestly not a super huge fan of, but I think the game made it work decently. I will say that the survival part didn't really add much to the game for me. I liked the exploration aspect, and I did get a really good amount of exploration in my time playing. I managed to find a lot of secrets, actually. I was surprised that in one area there were 4 secrets to find, and that was very impressive to me. I like when games have these secrets that you can find and give you kind of a motivation to explore more. Because once you find one secret, you start to realize, oh, there are probably other secrets that I can find by exploring. So the game really did do very well with the sense of exploration. And the fact that the game is set in such a historically relevant time period in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, I couldn't really tell if it was before the explosion or after the explosion. I'm pretty sure it's after the explosion because there's a ton of radiation, and one of the open cutscenes shows one of the reactors exploding and filling the area with radiation, which was a really cool scene, and it set up the rest of that segment well. I only played one segment of the game, and that I'll get into why later, but for now I want to focus on another thing that the game does really well, and I think I really enjoyed its characters. There are 2 characters that you find, or 3 characters that you find, and all 3 of them are supposedly friends. You never really know how they met, but they seem to be soldier friends. Your 2 friends are soldiers, and they lead you through the beginning of the game, lead you through these sewers, and you go through the sewers and come out and you're in one of the main areas of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. So it's very cool in that regard, and the characters interact in a fairly realistic way. There's some odd intersections of humor here, which I thought really dimmed the point of the game, which was this really kind of sad game. And I feel like the humor was very misplaced, and I don't think it should have been there. I get what they were trying to do, but I don't think it quite worked, honestly. And it's fine that it didn't work. Some things don't work, and whether they choose to go on with that or not is up to them. They are the developers, but in my opinion, the humor didn't quite fit with the rest of the tone of the game. Now, in terms of the actual gameplay, it's very early. The game is definitely early access, and that's mostly for the worst, unfortunately. And this is where I'm going to get into a lot of really unfortunate negatives that kind of took away from the experience for me, and it's kind of why I'm only making one video on this game. I was really confident that I was going to be covering this game for the long haul, but the launch of this game has been a little bit less than acceptable. Farm 51 had a really unfortunate launch with World War III. I remember I played the free weekend and I played whatever. I think they had an open beta. I don't remember. I played the game, and I can tell that Farm 51 has a lot of really good intentions in their hearts and in their minds for these games, but I'm not sure they're ready to release most of their games. World War III launched broken, and unfortunately this game has released similarly broken. The primary gameplay mechanic that is utterly and completely broken is the gunplay. Now, I didn't use guns a lot. I only actually used guns in one part of the game when I was sneaking up on some soldiers who were guarding the area, and I wanted to see what the combat was like. So I brought out my pistol and I started shooting. I aimed at their head, thinking that it was going to be a one-tap headshot, like a lot of games in this kind of realistic setting, but it's an RPG. It's not a realistic game where you're going to get a one-tap headshot. This is an RPG. And when I shot him in the head, I saw his health bar come up, and I was like, oh boy. And then I saw, and they have automatic guns, and I have a pistol. I had a shotgun, but I couldn't really switch to it in time before they started aimbotting, destroying me. And it was this part where I was like, man, I'm not sure about this one, because I didn't get to use the shotgun, unfortunately, because I died and I came back and I don't know, the mission seemed to be either bugged or I had already completed it and it didn't register that I had completed it. I don't know what happened with the mission, but I got really frustrated. And I'm going to be honest with you, I ended up refunding the game. because of that. And the primary reason I didn't refund it because of the broken mission. The mission was fine, and I actually was really enjoying the exploration and all that stuff in the game. I was hardcore into it. I love survival horror. Resident Evil 2 is one of my favorite games of this year. But here's the problem, and this is single-handedly the biggest problem in Chernobylite is the frame rate, the performance. The performance of the game is abysmally awful. I started playing it on high settings, and when the game opens, actually it runs good when it opens, but as you start getting into the deeper areas and the areas with more foliage and more detail, which there is a lot of detail in the environments, and that is something that I will give Farm 51 props for, is this incredible amount of detail in the world. Unfortunately, this detail seems to diminish the game's performance significantly. I was really not getting a lot of good frames, honestly. My main problem was when I was in these areas, I would get these glimpses of excellent frame rate, and it matched up with this gorgeous world. The big problem was that the frame rate never, ever, ever stayed consistent. And that sucks because the game is, at its core, I think it's something very special. And that's why I'm not done with the game. I'm just not gonna keep with it right now. And that's okay. That's okay. I was impressed with what I played at the least, but there are too many problems with its performance right now for me to personally recommend it. If you like games like the Stalker series and stuff like that, I never played them, but I was looking forward to this game because the Chernobyl setting is kind of unique, and we can agree that not very many games do it nowadays. So that's kind of cool that a game in 2019 is revisiting that area and making a new story in that area. The story is very typical: a man searching for his lost wife. It lost me within the first 5 minutes with any interest I had in the story when I realized it was going to be another one of those stories. You need to come up with something more unique for this Chernobyl zone than someone searching for his lost wife. That story's been done 800 gajillion times in every setting I can think of. Use this to your advantage. I gotta say, like, why wouldn't you use a great setting like this to your advantage? I don't know why you wouldn't. But the game does feature a fairly diminutive story, in my opinion, that does not really live up to the scale of where it's set and the historical importance of the area that it's set in. Another huge problem with the game, and it's a problem I have with a lot of RPGs, is these excuses they use for load screens. Like, there's this really cool part in the very first minutes of the game where you go through this, you pick up this Chernobylite. It's this stuff that opens like a portal to another world. It's weird. The story gets weird within the first 5 minutes. So they do embrace the weirdness very quickly, which is a good thing because the game is very different, I will say that much. And it seems to me that they had a really good idea with this, but they used it too much. You go into this, you pick up the Chernobylite, you open a portal. When you go through the portal brings you into another world where this Chernobylite is just everywhere. It's making bridges, it's making boxes, it's making screens where projections are shown. It's weird. And the first part, when you go into it, it's really cool because it kind of sets up the world, sets up the story, and even sets up some introductions, some intros for the characters, which is really cool in my opinion, and I think it worked really well. The problem is that this zone gets used over and over and over. I think I went through that area about 7-8 times in my 1 hour and 30 minutes of playing it, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. The first time I was. After the third time I was like, okay, I get it, you're loading the game. I liked walking through it, but it was, I don't know. I think they could have done without the loading screens. They could have taken a little more time and just done away with the loading screens altogether and just if the areas had flowed together, sorry, if they had flowed together well, then it would have worked better. If there were no loading screens between areas, then I think it would have worked a lot better. Unfortunately, it doesn't really, and I don't know how else to say it other than that. It just doesn't work from my perspective, and a lot of people have been reflecting that. The biggest problem of the game is not with its story. The story is whatever, it's a throwaway. The atmosphere is excellent. They have nailed the atmosphere of the game. They have nailed this sense of dread, this sense of danger in this Chernobyl exclusion zone. And it helps that it's set in a place where we already know what happened. We already know the historical relevance. And that makes it all the more kind of intense when you see that there's storms happening, there's thunderclaps going off that sound like gunshots. And I think that's a really clever kind of dichotomy with the storm and the soldiers guarding the areas, that they kind of come together in this storm where you don't know if it's a gunshot or if it's a gunshot or if it's a thunderclap. And that's a really cool, I just think it's cool audio design personally. But overall, I can't really recommend Chernobylite right now. The game is obscenely overpriced for what it offers right now. It is $30 right now for a poor performing, at best, like 5-hour game probably. I played about an hour and a half, and my game just felt broken to me. It felt like it wasn't complete. It felt like an alpha in a lot of ways, but also it felt like a complete game in other ways. Like there was no, I didn't get any crashes. The textures are beautifully done. The details are beautifully done. The character models are well rendered. But the game itself doesn't have a gameplay loop that really inspires much confidence right now. I'm going to follow the game beyond this point because I think this could be something down the line. But this is the overwhelming problem with early access, that early access, I just feel like it's an excuse to release a game unfinished. Some early access games do good, but I need to see a lot of work put into this game before I come back to it. And when it's a complete 20-hour whatever game, I'll come back to it and I'll play it, sure. But for now, I think that I really cannot recommend you a broken... A lot of the dialogue lines are broken. Some of the lines aren't voiced at all. There's a ton of stutters and lag. And the frame rate is just generally broken. I cannot recommend you this game at $30 right now with the time that you will get in playing it. But that's all I have to say about this. You can form your own opinion. I'll put the link to the game in the description if you want to check it out. I can tell these guys have a lot of passion for World War III and for Chernobylite. But these games need work. And if they work on them, I think these games can be something really special. And I think that I'm really interested in following Farm 51's work on both of these games. And hopefully both of these games will evolve into something really cool in the future. But that's all I have for you all today. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you all tomorrow. It's been a pleasure. Peace out.